Welcome. Welcome. We are about to go live here. Here we are. We are live and we are doing questions and answers on acting, AMA. Ask me anything. I have done a lot of work over the years and I know a lot of different answers. And I'm most specifically interested in helping you build your own acting technique. So, not my technique, but building your technique. So, let's get this started, and I'll be right back. Let's see this. I really am into acting, and I know you are too. And the most important thing in acting is emotion. You've got to be willing and capable, and you got to know some of these tricks. These tricks of being able to activate your emotion. You activate your emotion in the being side of the work, and then you catapult yourself and dive into the doing side of the work, the interaction. And this element called emotional preparation is key. Hi, my acting training is incredibly extensive. These are some of my notes. This is not all of them. By far, it's not all. And I really like acting. I really like the hardest component of acting is the emotion. And so that's why I run and operate emotional preparation. And there's information on that website that you can join me on my live feed, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesdays and Fridays. I hope to see you there. If you find the information on my website, you can actually join the live feed. I can send you a link and you can actually come on and talk to me face to face. And you can actually, we'll do emotional preparations together. So we can actually work to be able to access your emotions and help you be able to put emotions into your acting work. Okay, this is great. Really good. Thanks for joining me and continue to join. And we'll get through this. This is a very good thing. This is a very thing. I'm working to make sure that this is a permanent way for you to be able to ask and answer your live questions, both live with video, as well as actually being able to field questions by sending them to me by email or by the comments or however you want to send your questions, which would be great. Basically, by email, you can send it or you can make comments on the website. You can ask questions that way. You can also contact me via the email addresses or also with YouTube or Facebook. So you can definitely ask me questions a lot of different ways about acting. I'll tell you my opinion. Now, I don't ever assume that my opinion is the absolute correct answer for you in acting. I will tell you that I'm very certain of it, or if I know you well enough, I can absolutely tell you I have a very high certainty that this is what you need to know or adjust in your work. And it is up to you. It's always up to you in this industry for you to be able to make your own determinations and be able to find and mine emotion within your acting. Now, I really specify on being able to put emotion into acting. It's something that is so interesting to me, and it's very important. But as you know, there is many different things and factors in acting. And emotion is a huge one that gets overlooked and gets missed. And what it is, it's very difficult to initially have an emotion and to be able to ignite. You're literally starting up your emotion like a car engine. You're igniting it or you're activating your emotion. So you're in your work and you're absolutely igniting. You are activating your emotion. You are making it alive within you. And then there's the point of transition from that. So you're transitioning from activating your emotions successfully to be able to then go into your work. Well, Sanford Meisner and other people in the past, but he used to study acting from a lot of different areas. I mean, he really did study, but the he popularized this thing called uh, imaginary circumstances. So your goal is to be able to get the activation of emotion and be able to transition that emotion that's activated in you into the imaginary circumstances of your work. So you activate it, make sure it's alive. You might go into a small panic because that's your emotion actually getting activated. Now, I always say this, but it's important to understand and remember. Emotions are not feelings. Feelings are these things that have these implications of inclination. Feelings are something that are just inclinations. They are instincts. They're very important for your work, but they're not something that actually um, carries you into a place where you're actually, it doesn't stay with you. And a lot of times, what people will do is they'll do this process called emotional preparation, and they won't actually tap into or find their emotion. They will instead only tap the surface of a feeling. So they will not actually get that feeling to actually stay within them. Now, the absolute key in emotional preparation is not to get or chase a feeling. That's not the key. The key is to be able to get an activated emotion. Now, an activated emotion, no, a lot of times it's very, very, very true. You will work to activate your emotion, and your activated emotion will surprise you. You'll think that you're working to be able to have one thing, and all of a sudden you'll have this emotional response. Well, that is the moment that you want to work with this element that I'm describing now, called the imaginary circumstance. Now, your goal, whether you call it an imaginary circumstance or just your imaginary world, your goal as an actor is to be able to activate that emotion, activate it, not just some loose feeling, but activate some deep feeling, some actual emotion. And it's going to become alive in you. And then transition that live living thing from you into the imaginary world of your acting. That's the test. And I would call that the actor's leap of faith. The actor's leap of faith. So every single time, a lot of actors over the years, and I have seen a lot of acting. All right, a lot of acting. I have seen famous people come back from shooting and they don't know what's wrong with their work and they're troubleshooting to be able to find. Well, here's the problem. They weren't using their technique in acting. They weren't actually using their techniques when they were actually on film. And it's this simple. And here's the reason. It's very hard work to do the simplicity of finding an emotion, activating it, and then leaping into an imaginary circumstance. And you would be advised to be best, you'd be wisest to do this technique and keep practicing it over and over until it becomes second nature. And some of these exercises I'll do on the videos, and I have, and I'll continue to be able to do examples of these so that you can see me actually going into something that's a personal topic to me, talking it out a little bit, activating it up, having it live in me. And sometimes it's a very, very, very surprising emotion that comes. Maybe it's not the emotional ballpark that I initially thought that it was. But the thing to do is to immediately work with that and gain it so that you can leap it into your acting. So you're gaining that ability and you're working on that acting muscle where you're working to be able to build that transition from having an emotion into having an imaginary experience. Now, having an imaginary experience, that's acting. You're activating your imagination, you're having an imaginary experience. It's key. This is how you're capable of learning to be deeper and deeper and more relaxed in your acting, but yet still affected. So I'm gonna take a short break here, and then we're gonna come back and we're gonna talk about imagination and the topic of building your imagination. And the topic of building your imagination is a very, very interesting topic. And I am going to link emotional preparation to the topic of imagination and how to be able to build up some elements of yourself which will actually activate your imagination, and it will be fantastic for your work. And then I will field questions for your acting, your AMA. And whenever we have guests on here, we will have guests in the back room, and those guests will interject and we'll work with them. And I have to sometimes look down to check what's going on, which is normal. And we will start to go through how to be able to get the craft of acting in ourselves as an acting technique that we can actually practice to be better actors. And we can be better actors, even regardless if you're famous or not famous. It doesn't matter to me if you're famous, you could join the stream. If you're not famous, you can join the stream. It doesn't make any difference to me, your walk of life, your social calling, whatever the heck it is. I want to work with people that want to learn the technique of acting. And because they want to be able to have a more solid, active experience when they're acting. And that's the goal that people want when they're actually doing the actual work in acting. And that's when they call the golden moments in acting and film. And I know how very clearly to be able to activate and be able to create and train you to be able to find those golden moments inside of yourself in your acting. I really am into acting, and I know you are too. And the most important thing in acting is emotion. You've got to be willing and capable, and you got to know some of these tricks. These tricks of being able to activate your emotion. You activate your emotion in the being side of the work, and then you catapult yourself and dive into the doing side of the work, the interaction. And this element called emotional preparation is key. Hi, my acting training is incredibly extensive. These are some of my notes. This is not all of them. It's not all. And I really like acting. I really like the hardest component of acting is the emotion. And so that's why I run and operate emotional preparation. And there's information on that website that you can join me on my live feed, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesdays and Fridays. I hope to see you there. If you find the information on my website, you can actually join the live feed. I can send you a link and you can actually come on and talk to me face to face. And you can actually, we'll do emotional preparations together. So we can actually work to be able to access your emotions and help you be able to put emotions into your acting work. Okay, so we are going to get into the work today. And please tell all your friends, share this, Join yourself, make comments, ask questions. I already have a couple of questions, but the first thing we'll do is we'll go over the topic of building imagination. Now, I am really into, and I have studied the Meisner technique training with over 35 different Meisner teachers, who, by the way, have been training with Meisner uh, or were associated with that going back right into the I think it was 1970s or 60s. I have to check what year it was. But very early, even when he was studying in New York City. So it's not just, there's this big divide that actually happened within Meisner. And then a lot of the exercises started getting renamed. And the doors and activities became known as doors and activities rather than being called ins and outs. And the ins and outs were actually work that was done back in New York City. And initially, the word game was the original name for the repetition. And now it's become known as repetition. So when we're dealing with Meisner and when we're dealing with these techniques, I'm avid I have been avidly studying Meisner and studying classes, and I've seen well over 30,000 acting exercises. It's been an enormous amount of study. So I'm not making an opinion from no form of view. I have a point of view about acting. Now, that being said, there's been very, very little education on what is the imagination in acting. Very, very little. And I'm very, very dedicated to doing these elements in acting that are unconventional. Unconventional. Now, why would I want to do unconventional acting exercises? We already know that the Meisner exercises work to be able to do what? Add spontaneity, add elements of improvisation. You can use a lot of those exercises in various different ways. When you work through the work, there's fantasies work, there's Spoon Rivers work, there's all sorts of different things. And then there's all sorts of different teachers that have their own views and takes on it, of which I like to be able to consider many different points of view before I form my own opinions. But the topic of imagination, it's key. It's key. And a lot of times when people are capable and willing and able to activate their emotional life, they activate their emotion. It overwhelms them. And what they might do is they might have a habit to put their emotion away again. And then they go knock on the door in the exercise, or they go into their scene to do their work. And it's this lackluster expression, because the reality is that they actually put away the thing that actually activated within them. They didn't actually transition into their acting. Now, this is one very, very big reason why people would choose to put away their emotion once it gets sparked off of them. And that is because they don't know the next step. The next step after emotional preparation is entering in to an imaginary world. It's important. You enter into the imaginary. So you have to ask yourself, what are you capable of believing? What are you capable of believing? Now, I'm not asking what's true. You can ask yourself, could you believe that your neighbor would do such and such? Or that your neighbor, say that your neighbor could be a gambler. Could you ask yourself that your neighbor could have lost money in the stock market? Could you ask yourself if your neighbor gained money in the crypto market? Or could you ask yourself something that you could say, yes, it's believable to you, right? So you have this element in your work where if you're working with emotional preparation, you've activated this alive thing in you, and you don't know your next step. Now, in the rudimentary level, your next step is always to receive the other actor. Your first step in acting, I suggest, in my opinion, to consider this, that your first step, your first moment of your acting that you consider what is your first step in your acting is your receiving of another person in acting. Because when you're there, then both of you are there. Now you've got something, you've received something. So now there's some reality that's going to work. Now that's very good advice. There's elements to that that will actually work, and it will work well. Now, the question to ask yourself, are you capable of believing, right? Is it believable? Are you able to expand your imagination? Now, what type of imagination am I talking about? Any type of imagination that serves the script. There's no absolute rules to any of it. And this is the biggest thing. I have seen people literally train Meisner or train with acting, and they have finally realized that there was no rules, that maybe they were searching for something that they already figured out kind of on their own. And then they were able to take major leaps into their acting career. And everybody was like, well, they're not in class anymore. Why? They're booking parts. What's sad about it is some of them wanted more technique training than they actually got, but that's still okay. They're out working. That's good for them. They found their own belief system. They're able to figure out a couple techniques that work for them. And you could literally just take what's on this 1 hour work right now, and you could build out an entire approach for yourself. It'd be better if you learn more, but you could literally work with what there is here. So a lot of people work and they want to perform emotion. We're not working to perform emotion. We're looking to work with activated emotion. So activated emotion is not emotion that you even get to control fully. You don't have full control of it. It's going to ooze out of you. It has its own timing. It's like when you vomit, you don't actually have full control. You can direct the vomit, but you won't really have the ability to control the vomit when it's coming from you. It's the same thing with your emotion. Sometimes it's subtle, sometimes it's extreme, and that's where it is. And if you work to be able to focus and receive the other person, then you're for sure going to be in a situation. You're for sure going to be something, somehow there's going to be something that's actively a participation, which is what's called interaction in acting. So you want to do this thing called mining your emotional preparation, right? Or you want to do a mining. There's mining in your emotional preparation, which is your finding of your emotions. And then there's mining of your own imagination. So instead of not knowing where to put that activated emotion. Now, first of all, if you're putting it with your attention on the other person and you're receiving the other person, that's great. That's great. But to further that, you could go and leap in to an imaginary world or an imaginary circumstance. So what does this mean? It means that you can actually prepare your imaginary circumstance. Nobody talks about this. How would you prepare your imaginary circumstance? You prepare your imaginary circumstance by literally adding things that you know activate you in your acting. Now, you activate things in your acting. You add into your imaginary circumstances things that activate you. So now you have both. You know that you can connect what's streaming out of you emotionally to something that you recognize or activates you in your imaginary world, in your imaginary circumstance, with receiving your partner. And now you've got this trifecta. You've got some chemistry that's going to work in your acting, regardless if it's good, bad, if it affects you negatively in a way, or if it's sharp or some element that it's going to still work. It's going to work. There's going to be liveliness in it. You're going to feel alive in it. Now, this is key. A lot of actors don't know that they can activate their imaginary. A lot of people don't know how to work with emotional preparation consistently because they're chasing feelings. But you can both work with your emotional preparation and you can also work with components that activate you in your imagination. So you have your imaginary circumstances working to continuously work so that there's something coming from you and there's working from you, which is key, very key. Now, the trick is to build up possibilities. Now, this is the trick for acting. You take the element of, let's say you're going into a scene and you know the scene. You know that the scene is supposed to be this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. You know there's 4 major sections of the scene. Great. Now, most people doing that part would imagine to themselves, they would just go and do the scene. They'd consider acting to be doing. They'd say all they had to do was do the interaction of each of those parts, which is great. And if you're going to do that and it works for you, that's great. But don't miss this point. The trick is to build up possibilities. Possibilities in acting actually are things that can activate you and give you spontaneity in the scenes. So instead of anticipating, this is the section, then this is the section, then this is the section, then this is the last section. And what will happen is that your work will work. It will look and be completely rehearsed. You can work with imagination to add the possibilities that you literally are maybe uncertain that the person, what the person's response is going to be in one section or another section or another section. So I would do this consistently so that I have more spontaneity in my work. And then people would ask, how is he so spontaneous? How come there's this live reaction? How come he's consistently surprised when he's hearing the same thing over and over? Now, this is a real gem in acting. You work to be able to give yourself the possibility that maybe the person's going to tell you the opposite. Maybe you're going to go in and you'd start doing some emotional preparation, or you start mining just your imaginary circumstances, right? Or your imaginary world. You start preparing that for yourself, and you start preparing maybe a possibility that's different. Say you're going to do a scene where you're meeting somebody and you're meeting their fiance, or you are their fiance, and you're meeting their parents. And you're expecting everything to go extremely well at the meeting. You're meeting the person's people. There's all great. Wonderful, right? Well, what you can do is incredible. You can give yourself an imaginary possibility that it doesn't go well. And what will happen is when you actually do the scene and the thing actually goes well, just like the writers were given, you've got that extra spark in you of liveliness. So you've just gifted yourself this incredible gift in your work of acting. And this isn't old. I mean, I'm sure many actors over decades and decades and decades have thought to do this, but I don't hear people talking about it. Nobody's mentioned it. I've studied 35 different teachers. This is not something that I hear. I could imagine that people would do it, but I'm the only one that I know that does that technique, and it's because it works, not because it doesn't. Now, would it work for you? It should, because you're giving yourself something that's different than what is actually happening in the scene. You're giving yourself the opposite of what is actually happening in the scene. So when you're living the scene out, you're not expecting the results of the scene to go, even if you go and do the scene 20 times. Every single time. You work in a way, you activate yourself in a way, you prepare your imaginary circumstances, you don't think it's going to go that great, and then all of a sudden, it goes great. Surprise. Next time you do the scene, do something similar. You're activating this element in yourself. You're working with your imagination. So you can do your emotional preparation and you jump into the imaginary circumstances. It's valid. It's a good technique. So you can genuinely be surprised, and you can genuinely be involved in interaction. And this is key. So when we come back, I'm going to field some questions. Actually, I'm going to finish this up. I think that there might be a couple more points. And then we will field some questions. I really am into acting, and I know you are too. And the most important thing in acting is emotion. You've got to be willing and capable, and you got to know some of these tricks. These tricks of being able to activate your emotion. You activate your emotion in the being side of the work, and then you catapult yourself and dive into the doing side of the work, the interaction. And this element called emotional preparation is key. Hi, my acting training is incredibly extensive. These are some of my notes. This is not all of them. By far, it's not all. And I really like acting. I really like the hardest component of acting is the emotion. And so that's why I run and operate emotional preparation. And there's information on that website that you can join me on my live feed, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesdays and Fridays. I hope to see you there. If you find the information on my website, you can actually join the live feed. I can send you a link and you can actually come on and talk to me face to face. And you can actually, we'll do emotional preparations together. So we can actually work to be able to access your emotions and help you be able to put emotions into your acting work. Okay, that's good. Now, I want to finish up a couple of things here. We are checking everything here, getting the questions set up. Um, so we are set up to work, and okay, so what we can do here is I want to go through a very simple lesson here. And this is the reason to activate your imagination in acting, right? You want to activate your imagination in acting. Now, in life, unless you have a very boring life, which you might, and even if you do, this is even a better reason. If you have a boring life, acting is probably very exciting for you because there's something to do, right? There's all these different elements that you can work on and you can achieve, and you can play around with these different emotional elements. And this is why people do acting, right? So the reason to activate your imagination in acting is to give yourself the possibilities of something different happening than what does. So instead of having a straight-laced situation where you know exactly what's going to happen, you're in a situation where instead you're capable of having and nurturing the ability to have an experience. So you're having an experience in acting. You're literally capable of putting yourself in to have an experience. Now, when you work with emotional preparation, you work with emotions, you activate your emotions. And the reason why you do that is because then you can affect the depth of the experience. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, how that emotion is going to affect you in your acting, which is key. Key. So if you already know what's going to happen in the scene, why would you do the scene? And the trick in acting is to be able to have your work working for you. So you're activated. And this is the biggest reason why you do emotional preparation, right? So you can prepare on what's happened prior to the moment. And you can also prepare for all the possibilities of what could be happening within you during the scene. And then you can just see how the interaction happens, which is great, really great. But the thing that you can do is you can also activate imagination in your acting. What are the possibilities to the scene? Now, here's what I would do. If I'm given a scene, and I'm given a scene where I know a certain criteria is given, I would write down alternatives to those scenes. I would write down alternatives. So I would find the unconventional versions of that scene. Now, this is the way absolutely to rehearse. This is the way absolutely to be able to be in a way where you're giving more life and more life to your acting. It's incredible what the results can be because you can build up this whole thing that's even more real than life. You know, I mean, it can literally be more enthralling to you. It can be more exciting to you. It can be literally like it can be more activating to you doing these scenes and working with these different possibilities than your real life. And that would be fine. A lot of actors have more excitement in their life in acting than they do outside of their acting. Not all, but some. So what you want to look at is you want to see the imagination. Your imagination is the pool that you jump into as an actor. So you have your you have the imagination, right? Your imagination, which is the thing that you're going to jump into in your acting. And you can then work in all kinds of ways with this imagination situation. You can decide what to activate. The writer chooses the moment that you enter the scene, right? But then you can choose and add things that actually activate you within your acting. So you can jump into your own developed imaginary world, which is key. This is the difference between an actor that has 20 plus years experience and somebody that doesn't. The actor that has 20 something years experience sits there and is able to think of the possibilities to the scene that never is written by the writer, and then in a relaxed way be surprised when the scene lives out the way that the writer intended. It takes time to do this, by the way, years. But that's okay. You can learn it. When you put attention on something, you can learn it. So you want to design your own imagination pool in acting. Now, it's vital that you design this for yourself because most people don't know that they can design it. Okay, so we are going to field some questions. I have some written down, some emailed, some sent via YouTube DM, I think they're called. Anyway. Okay, so question. Acting questions. So feel free, ask me acting questions, whether you're listening to this live or if you're actually get this later, you can still submit the acting questions, and I should get the acting questions. And if you want to be sure, then you can email me them. Let me see if I have an ability. Let's see here. You can email me at Simon Blake at Emotional Preparation. And there are instructions on the website. So, and I will write down your questions for the live stream and make sure I address them. Sometimes I will do a complete video on the question that you ask me. Other times I will do a complete video for the topic of the day, the acting topic of the day that I do most days for the YouTube, and that will go out everywhere internationally. So that's good. Okay. Now, first question is, Simon, how do I deal with my nerves in acting? That's a good question. How do I deal with my nerves in acting? Okay, so I think the first thing to do to deal with nerves in acting is to ask yourself where the nerves are coming from. Are the nerves coming from not knowing what to do in acting, or are the nerves coming because you know what to do, but you're just nervous to do them? See, the reason why we learn acting technique is we were able to, and we work to be able to learn techniques in acting that can actually activate us, for one, but can by focusing, we're not focused on the audience after we activate an emotion. It might be nerve-wracking to be able to activate an emotion and then like this is where it gets really tricky. This is why today we've spent some time working on what to do next. I mean, the first thing to do is receive the other person. You could also dive into the imaginary circumstance, but you've got to know what the imaginary circumstances is or what they are. And the thing is, if your nerves, if you're activated in emotion, where are your nerves? You don't really have any nervousness over you're in a different space. Your nerves aren't going to work the same way as if you just memorized a bunch of lines and you go into work and do acting. So you want to be able to do this thing where you're activated in your emotion, and then you're focused on your acting technique. And your acting technique is literally transitioning into the imaginary world. So you've merged it. You've got that working, so it's completely different. Now this is key, because then what will happen is that your acting nerves, they just won't be there. Your acting nerves won't be in the situations where you're actually nervous. You literally won't be aware of the audience, because the only thing that you're focused on is just doing this technique. The audience later might startle you one way or another, but for the most part, your focus and concentration is literally just on connecting whatever's activated in you, and then you work to be able to put that into the technique. That's the reason why techniques work. So it's a good question. I mean, Simon, how do I deal with my nerves in acting? Well, why are you having nerves? If you're having nerves because you don't have technique, I'm answering your question really well. Find your own technique in acting. And this is the other problem. Many people say, well, emotional preparation is only for the first moment. Anything else is like witchcraft and acting or whatever the heck. And it's like, no, it is for the first moment. There's preparations that you can do for the first moment, but it carries over into the work. If you activate that you're completely panicked and you activate actual real panicness inside of yourself, you're going to be caught off guard. The only thing that you need to work on or focus on is just getting that panic into your work. You just jump that into the imaginary circumstance. And then you don't know what's going to happen next. And neither does the other actor. I mean, this is the whole point, is you've worked to be able to do the internal work, or what I always call it's the being side of acting. You got your being side of acting, and then you jump into the doing side of acting. So you've got the doing side of acting is your interaction. Your only thing to focus on and the only thing to worry about is, one, do you have an active emotion? Is it activated? And two, are you carrying it into the imaginary circumstance? And are you receiving your partner? That's it. Everything else, there's no time for nerves. There was somebody that's going to be even richer than they are. And they asked a question. They were asked a question about what do they do? I mean, they're in a situation where they're asked, do they ever sit back and contemplate? No, they have no idea. They don't sit back and contemplate. They're too busy. They're too busy designing a whole new infrastructure for something that they're working on. They don't have time to sit and think about it. So when I see this question, I know it's a good question. It's a great question. Simon, how do I deal with my nerves in acting? But here's the thing. Successful people are busy working. See, I may have nobody on the stream. I may have 10 people on the stream. I might have 100 people on the stream. It might be live. It might not be live. There may be 1,000 people watch it 3 weeks from now. I don't know. but my focus isn't on the nerves of the thing. My focus is on the effort of doing the stream. The focus is on the effort of getting the internal connected to the external. So you're dealing with the infrastructure of building the infrastructure up and working only on the infrastructure. And then the rest is later on. And do successful people sit and think, well, a lot of them don't. A lot of them are too busy. They're too busy focusing and working. So figure out, and this is the reason why I have the emotions list. I have an emotions list of over 900 emotions. That's going to be growing, by the way. We're doing emotional preparations with our emotions, with stuff that really activates in us. So we're doing real acting work. We're not focused on our nerves. And I would really ask you to look at this, because this is the thing. If you're focused on nerves and acting, you probably haven't activated your emotions deeply enough. You want to activate your emotions until you don't feel your nerves. All you feel is some rush come over you. You feel that rush come over you. What to do? What to do with that emotional rush? Connect it to the imaginary circumstance. One. And number two, receive your partner. Now you practice doing that 500 times. People are going to start saying, oh, well, that's a person that studies that acting technique. They have acting technique. There's something about them that's different. Casting directors will say, well, they have something different about themselves. These people study. These are the serious actors. And a lot of people don't even know how to get the emotion, which we're going through. We're doing the work. We're working. It's going to be great. It is already great, and it's going to get better. So I hope that answers your question. And let me know in the comments section if it has, because nerves are not something that you should be feeling in your acting. Nerves are something that is you work through them. You work through them because you've got activation. You don't really have time to worry about nerves when you've just recalled some emotional trauma and you've activated it. I mean, it's just not something that's there. I mean, you've activated the emotion, you work with your emotion, it's activated, and that's it. So really consider that for yourself. Really consider it. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. I was going to go over a sneak peek of the work, but that's okay. I will. Okay, let's go through the next question. The next question. The next question is, what can I do to stick out in acting? That's the question. What can I do to stick out in acting? There is a reason why I'm consistently working on activations of emotion. I work on activating emotions. I work on activating emotional, imaginary circumstances. So I've got this ability to leap my activated emotion into that. Now, why is this so important? This does answer your question. Why does, what can I do? That's the question. What can I do to stick out in acting? Most people have no acting technique. Most people take Meisner technique, and the only thing that they get out of it is to be spontaneous, to be a little bit improvisational, and to come out of the classes saying all they have to do is do. I know I really like everybody in the community. I really do. But it's the truth. Most people say acting is doing. That's the only thing they need to know about acting. Acting is way more than doing. Acting is being. Acting is activation. The reason why it's called acting is because it has to do with how well you know how to do activation. Do you know how to activate an emotion, and do you know how to leap into an imaginary circumstance? So what can you do to stick out in acting? Learn technique in acting. And I'm not talking about learning my technique. You could. Maybe my technique works exactly for you and you and I are very alike. I don't know, that's possible. But the thing is even if that is possible, there'll be elements in it that you can tweak, that there's elements that you can change a little bit so you can actually have elements that are actually unique to you. Okay, so we can take one more question. Now, again, please join me, live stream, join the live stream, contact me in the back office. You can come in the backstage area. We can talk about whatever it is and really work on whatever it is for acting. And I have a lot of experience, a lot. I am very, very, very qualified in acting. It's the truth. It really is. So, okay, next question is, Simon, you talk about talent, getting or having talent. What do you mean? The question is, Simon, you talk about talent, getting or having talent. What do you mean? Okay. Talent is a few different things. It's the ability to express what you actually have internal. That would be my number one thing. That's what talent is. Talent is the ability to connect to other people. Talent is an ability to be relaxed in yourself. See, the craft of emotional preparation, it could be talent, but I wouldn't say that that's overall blanket talent. It's obviously a talent to be able to do emotional preparation. But what do I think? I think talent is the ability to interact. Talent is the ability to put internally what's externally. It's not see, there's a lot of aspects of talent. Are you capable of imagination? Are you capable of believing a circumstance? Are you capable of believing a relationship? So you go into a relationship exercise. What is it? Are you capable of doing a relationship? Are you capable of believing and building up that element? A lot of times in talent, the most talented people, they work on this element of like creativity, in the element of imagination and the element of belief. So, the question says, Simon, you talk about talent, getting or having talent. What do you mean? One aspect of getting talent is getting activated emotion. That's emotional preparation. But being able to activate an upsetness isn't really like, it isn't a talent, but it wouldn't go very far unless you're capable of receiving the other person or interacting with it. So it would be a talent, but it wouldn't be a talent in motion unless it was interactive. I mean, a person that has talent has emotional availability, I would say. So my answer to that would be, my answer to this is, what do I mean about when I talk about having or getting talent? I talk about the ability for you as an actor to have emotional availability. That's my biggest thing. Are you emotionally available to both receive something in a sensitive way and also to be able to give what's internal and make it external? So, okay, so this is we've passed our time, and I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for sharing the broadcast with people, and let me know what and how and things that I can change to make this even better and more on point for you. Um, how would it be most beneficial to be able to help your acting? Okay, let's wrap up with this. I really am into acting, and I know you are too. And the most important thing in acting is emotion. You've got to be willing and capable, and you got to know some of these tricks. These tricks of being able to activate your emotion. You activate your emotion in the being side of the work, and then you catapult yourself and dive into the doing side of the work, the interaction. And this element called emotional preparation is key. Hi, my acting training is incredibly extensive. These are some of my notes. This is not all of them. By far, it's not all. And I really like acting. I really like the hardest component of acting is the emotion. And so that's why I run and operate emotional preparation. And there's information on that website that you can join me on my live feed, 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Tuesdays and Fridays. I hope to see you there. If you find